Hey, welcome along. I thought today I'd talk about things here in America that seem odd to me, and the fact that they don't seem odd to many other people is kind of disturbing and even odder to me. And I want to start with the most basic thing, because there've been new revelations in the last couple of days about the so-called Russia investigation. And the Russia investigation is a bit like that bit in the beginning of the Godzilla movie where everybody's standing around in this mysterious indentation and they can't figure out what it is or where it's come from. And it's only when the camera shoots up to way up in the sky and looks back down that you realize they're all standing in a giant footprint and that Godzilla's about to come in and stomp them. And that's where we are in some of this. People are fascinated by weird little developments, and we're missing the fact what the actual giant footprint is. And the most basic fact about the state of American politics in this present cycle is that in 2016, both presidential candidates were under federal investigation. That seems odd to me. It would seem odd in most countries. It would seem odd just north of the border. If in the last election both Stephen Harper and Justin Trudeau were under government investigation, were being investigated by the Mounties and CSIS. It would seem odd in Australia if Mr Turnbull and Mr Shorten had been under investigation at the last election. It would have been odd in the United Kingdom if both Theresa May and Jeremy Corbyn had been under investigation by the government, by the state, by MI5, by the Metropolitan Police in the last investigation. But here we have a country, and those are just de facto two-party states. If you, in the event that they were under investigation, you could vote for third, fourth, fifth parties that aren't under investigation. But here, it's an all but de jure two-party state. It's actually very difficult to start a third party, and so only at the last November, only Hillary Clinton or Donald Trump was going to be president. And both of them were under government investigation. That's odd. I feel like, and I don't quite understand why other people don't think of it as odd. I feel a bit like Lady Bracknell. To have one of your two candidates under government investigation is a misfortune. To have both, all of your presidential candidates under government investigation looks a bit like carelessness. But it's that fact itself is odd. It's odd. Now we'll look at the two different investigations. The one into Hillary Clinton and the one into Donald Trump. In the case of Hillary Clinton, as the FBI director, James Comey, conceded when he announced that he was not going to prosecute. Again, that's odd, by the way, that the policeman, the investigator, is also the prosecutor. That would also be odd in most functioning justice systems. But Loretta Lynch had recused herself, and so the policeman had somehow wound up appointing himself the prosecutor as well. I don't understand that either. That too seems to me odd, and actually malodorous in the extreme. But as James Comey said, when he announced that even though he was not going to prosecute her, she was undeniably guilty of committing certain offences. She'd broken her employer's rules and regulations, and as her employer is the government, that means it's a criminal matter. The FBI doesn't investigate civil cases or contract disputes. It investigates criminal behavior. And, as you know, Loretta Lynch, the Attorney General, asked that the Hillary Clinton investigation be referred to not as an investigation, but as a matter. As a matter. She wanted to dial it down, tamp it down a bit. And that's one way to do it. But it doesn't remove the fact that everybody knows that there were things that Hillary Clinton did wrong and that got people who worked for Hillary Clinton fired. There was a US ambassador in East Africa who did what Hillary Clinton did. He used his personal email for work business, and Hillary Clinton had him removed from office. That's what Hillary Clinton did. Now, Hillary Clinton did this because she had that sense of entitlement that the Clintons have, that the rules are for the little people. The rules are for the little people. And the problem for the FBI is that they're investigating a very powerful person. They're also investigating someone who is in the midst of a political campaign to be her party's candidate. And she is, or purports to be, the people's choice. Let's put to one side the fact that the Democrat Party is a rigged institution. And so if it had been a genuinely popularly responsive institution, Bernie Sanders would have won those early primaries, racked up big victories, and he'd have been the candidate. Let's put that to one side a moment. So you're dealing with the fact that at the same time as you're investigating her, she's racking up millions of votes in this presidential primary. And in that case, the presidential primary is functioning as a form of industrial scale jury nullification, as it were. And I wouldn't mind that. I understand that would pose difficulties for the investigator, for a guy like Comey and for the FBI. I can understand that's a difficult thing. To tell the democratic choice of one of two political parties, your candidate has to be removed because she's engaged in criminal behavior. And in a certain sense, I can understand Loretta Lynch having her mysterious airplane meeting with Bill Clinton that resulted in her having to recuse herself. I can understand that because in a semi-healthy polity, someone at some point would go to Hillary Clinton and say, "Look, here's the deal. You've done things that are criminal, that would have got someone below you tossed in the slammer. We're not going to toss you in the slammer, but we think that it's not proper for you to run for the presidential nomination of your party, and we'd rather you didn't do it. The trade-off is if you don't do it, if you don't run for the presidential nomination, we're not going to make a big deal about this thing and send you to Sing Sing for 15 years for what you did. That's the deal. You can take it or leave it." But Hillary Clinton was never going to take that deal, because if she had a sense of what is seemly and what is appropriate, the wife of the previous president would never have been running for president, because that's real banana republic stuff. That's Eva Peron stuff. So evidently, appealing to a sense of what is seemly and proper wouldn't work with Hillary Clinton. So the police agencies of the United States government are faced with the fact that at the same time as they're trying to hang this criminal thing around her neck, she's racking up millions of votes. What are you going to do? Remove one party's presidential candidate and say, "Tough, your millions of votes are nullified. You'll have to have this Martin O'Malley character," or whatever he's called. What's he called? I can't remember the name of the guy. Martin McNally, O'Malley, whatever he is. You'll have to have him, or you'll have to have Lincoln Chafee, or you'll have to have, we'll press Joe Biden in service. But you can't have the one you wanted to choose. So that was a political problem for them. Now we come to the other political candidate who was under investigation. Donald Trump. Nobody has named a single thing that Donald Trump did that was illegal. Yet the Trump campaign was under investigation by the same FBI that did a very desultory investigation of Hillary Clinton. Comey, for example, James Comey, incidentally, is a disgraceful man, totally temperamentally unfit to hold that office and should never have been FBI director. But he wrote his memo essentially giving Hillary a pass on what he conceded were criminal activities weeks before he interviewed her. And the circumstances in which he interviewed her were themselves, as to use the word I used before, malodorous. Now we have the Trump thing. Nobody can say what Trump is supposed to have done. He's supposed to have colluded with Russians, with Russia, not Russians, because it's not illegal to meet with Russians. My daughter has spent much of the last few months in St. Petersburg, met with Russians all the time. It's not illegal to meet with Russians. But the Trump campaign supposedly colluded with the government of Russia to interfere with the election. And we have been investigating, they've been investigating this now since well over a year. And the argument, just to go back to the argument I made about Hillary, that in a sense it's difficult, it places the FBI and the Justice Department in a terrible position where you're asked to interfere with the electoral process and with the Democratic Party's choice for its presidential nominee in the run-up to the election. Well, that's an argument. You can make that argument. What's happening now is a much longer interference, not in one political party's choice, but in fact in the electorate's choice, in the elected president, and one that is having destabilizing effects on his ability to govern for months and months and months now without any crime being identified. In the Hillary case, the crime occurred. Comey conceded that. Nobody has identified what the crime is in the Trump investigation. So we now have a situation where Paul Manafort this has come out in the last couple of days, his home is raided. A dawn raid. They pick his lock and enter the house while he and his wife are in bed together. And they, for example, search his wife, who's presumably in her nightgown, to see whether she's got any weapons on her. Mrs. Manafort, because they're worried, these big federal agents, in case Mrs. Manafort pulls an AK-47 from under her negligee and blows them all to hell, supposedly. And we're supposed to think that this is all very clever. Here we go. This is the New York Times thing. With a picked lock and a threatened indictment, Mueller's inquiry sets a tone. Oh, they're setting a tone, are they? Oh, that's police state behaviour. Picking the lock at dawn and searching the wife in her nightgown just in case she's got an AK-47 under the negligee. This is amusing to the New York Times. Oh, this Bob Mueller is so sophisticated. He's setting a tone. It's police state behaviour. And actually, what's interesting about it is most police state behaviour is at least in the service of the ruling regime. Here we have police state behaviour, not in the service of the regime, the Trump administration, but in the service of the permanent bureaucracy, working against the Trump administration and the regime. Now, as I said, I find that odd. And I find the fact that the New York Times isn't disturbed by it odd. There's no reason to pick the lock of Paul Manafort. And there's no reason to search Mrs. Manafort when they kick open the bedroom door and she's in bed and they're worried she's going to blow their heads off. And the fact that the New York Times and CNN are amused by it is actually disgusting. What's disgusting is federal justice, the federal justice system in this country. And I know people think it's clever. It's the kind of, they nailed Al Capone on on tax evasion. You know, everyone thinks that's clever. It isn't actually clever. You should be able to nail Al Capone on what he actually did. The justification for picking the lock at Paul Manafort's home is that normally would be that he's going to destroy evidence. That's not what's going on here. What they're looking for is a process crime. I myself had cause to go and see the FBI the other day. Not the other day, a couple of months ago. I went to see Special Agent Jenny, a very nice lady, and we were chit-chatting about the matter, as Loretta Lynch would say, under discussion. And I said to her at one point, "What do you think's going on here?" And she said, "Oh, we don't know about that. Often the way it goes here is we'll investigate somebody for 2 or 3 years, and at the end of it, we don't really know why they've done what they've done, so we just nail them on mail fraud." And that's what's going to happen with Paul Manafort. The reason they picked the lock and went into the house is to get everything and take away everything. Because if you take away everything in a country as over-regulated as this, you can find some infraction that the guy has committed, some rinky-dink little mail fraud thing, wire fraud thing, and then they'll offer him a deal to serve up Trump to them so they don't nail him on the mail fraud or wire fraud and take him to court over that. Because if they do take you to court, the Department of Justice wins 97% of the cases they take to court, which is a rate of conviction that Kim Jong-un would find impressive. So you know if you're taken to court, you're done for. Boom. So you want to cut a deal. So they're going to find a process crime. They're going to find a process crime. Now, Paul Manafort, he was under investigation. The FBI were wiretapping him from 2014 to early 2016. And they didn't get the goods on him. So at some point, they stop. Then they resume in late 2016 and continue into 2017. Not the FBI, the government, the Obama administration directly gets a wiretap on him. So Trump is right. Trump was right when he said that they were wiretapping Trump Tower to this extent, that Paul Manafort lives in Trump Tower. They were tapping phones in Trump Tower and thereby eavesdropping on the conversations between Manafort and the incoming president. Now, here's what's shocking to me about this. We have a situation where the ruling party is wiretapping its political opposition. And again, the New York Times and CNN don't find that odd. Don't find that odd. People say, oh, well, they're using FISA. FISA, you know, that's for national security things. That's mostly rubbish. Mostly nonsense. FISA, you can get for a start, the FISA court will sign off on anything. You can get a wiretap on. And again, the whole foreign agent thing is a rubbish conception anyway, because you can get FISA to sign off on a warrant if Paul Manafort has been meeting with, say, a Canadian. So in this case, for example, just to, as an example of what they're doing, a prince from the United Arab Emirates comes to America. And he wants to meet with the Obama administration. This is after the election. And the Obama administration blows him off. The president doesn't want to see him, hasn't got time for him. He's not interested now. He's on his way out the door, doesn't care about this big shot prince from the United Arab Emirates. So the guy goes to see the incoming administration in Trump Tower. And the outgoing administration wiretaps the meeting between the prince from the United Arab Emirates, which is not a U.S. enemy, that's an ally. and his meetings with the Trump administration. So again, what we have here, what is going on, is that the Obama administration is doing what all the civil liberties left said Bush was doing 10 years ago. It's using national security as a pretext for eavesdropping on its domestic enemies. And in this case, what we have is the ruling party and the permanent bureaucracy eavesdropping on, using national security as a cover to eavesdrop on its political opposition. This is the most egregious banana republic stuff. And the fact that it's been going on now, in the case of Paul Manafort, since 2014, tells you how little there is there. They're going to nail the guy. They're going to destroy his life unless he coughs up Trump to them for something or other. But that shouldn't excuse what's going on here, which is disgusting and corrupt. And Americans, in fact, should be ashamed of the state of their federal justice system. Absolutely ashamed of it. Because this is classic banana republic territory. We have the ruling party and the permanent bureaucracy using the cover of national security to wiretap and eavesdrop on its political opposition. And if the excuse with Hillary was that it was not in the national interest to prosecute the candidate of the Democratic Party, why is it not in the national interest to either put up or shut up with this phony baloney Russia investigation? Paul Manafort, the first wiretap started in 2014. That's over 3 years ago. Again, that's disgusting. These year-long investigations that go nowhere and yet chug on for months and months and months, ensnaring more and more people, paralyzing more and more parts of government. With a picked lock and a threatened indictment, Mueller's inquiry sets a tone. The tone he's setting is the tone of banana republic secret police. Americans should be ashamed of this nonsense, regardless of whether you're Democrat or whether you're Republican. But the fact that we have a joke investigation of one candidate that is perfunctory and designed to get her off the hook, and then an equally ludicrous investigation of the other candidate that is designed to ensnare that candidate and mire everyone around him in investigation for the entirety of his first term, is outrageous. Where is Sessions on this? Where is the so-called Attorney General of the United States on an out-of-control intelligence establishment, on an out-of-control Federal Bureau of Investigation, and on an out-of-control special prosecutor? And where are the rights of a citizen when he has been investigated for 3.5 years and they still can't find the goods on him, but they won't let up? It's not clever to nail Al Capone on tax evasion. It's pathetic. And the fact that it has become institutionalized does not speak well for federal justice in this country. We'll see you next time.